Hello and welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show. It's our Leeds United debate show, if I can get my words out. And this week we are debating whether we think Leeds United are ever going to win the FA Cup again, debating why they've been generally so unsuccessful in the FA Cup and why it's led to so many disappointments, and taking a look back at certain memorable games and results and also our memories on it as well. I'm Stephen Brown. With me is Jason Booker. Jason, how are we doing, mate?
Very well, my friend. Very well. I mean, I'm not sure how buoyed I'm going to be about this topic, given how miserable the run has been over the years. But yeah, it should be interesting.
It's going to be a good one. And if you are interested and you're watching along with us live, get your comments in about your FA Cup memories with Leeds and what you think's the problem and why Leeds United and the FA Cup just don't seem to mix. If you're watching again later, please leave us a comment as well and do like the video also. So first of all, I just wanted to kind of chat a little bit about what the FA Cup kind of means to us. For me, it was huge back in the day. So I became a football fan. You're probably talking early to mid 90s, and it was a massive deal. The FA Cup final was the end of the season. There were no games after that. It didn't share the day with any other games. It was the end of the season. The build-up used to last all day on TV. It was a big event. And so many memorable games through the years with team, not Leeds obviously in the final, but other teams certainly. And then kind of over the years, interesting, it's dwindled. I think it's been undermined at certain points. And, you know, it's become almost, you're like, oh, FA Cup, you know, like, oh, I just want to crack on with the league. You know, the FA Cup, especially when you go out, you know, nearly always on that first round or third round when Leeds are normally in it.
I think if you're not in the Premier League, it's especially like that, Brownie.
Yeah, because so many games, isn't there? You think, not another one to squeeze in. However, I want to counter that to say that when we beat Peterborough and you get through to that next round and you're watching the draw and your team's in it, there's a little pang of excitement. And if you know, this is filmed, you know, ahead of playing Plymouth at the weekend in the FA Cup fourth round. If we get through that, there's going to be a little bit of excitement building there as well. But I mean, Jason, the FA Cup, how important has it been to you as a football fan generally through the years?
I'll be honest with you. I think I'm probably the last of the generation that'll have the romance around the FA Cup. I think certainly the younger generation, I'd say anybody under the age of 30 probably has got a depreciating value of it. It's a cup competition that comes around. I think if you're a Premier League team that are never expected to get far in a cup final, it don't mean very much. I think if you're a League One team or below, you get excited about a big draw and getting the opportunity to go to a big ground that you might never get to go to ever. You know, other than in one of the cup competitions. I think it's exciting for them. I think as a championship team, which predominantly we have been for the last, 10, 15 years, I think I think it kind of gets lost. It is an inconvenience. It's a hindrance to whatever expectations you've got in your particular season, whether that's staving off relegation or trying to gain promotion. And it has become a little bit about that. But I think for me, I've always had a certain amount of excitement around the FA Cup, looking at, the giant killers that pop up, hoping to see one of the big teams get knocked out by a League Two team or even a non-league team, which we've seen over the years, having the opportunities to poke fun at Manchester United because they lost to MK Dons as an example, which happened a few years ago. That was brilliant, or whoever it might be. I remember the Arsenal Reading game. I think, was that a League Cup or FA Cup semi-final? It went to a replay and it was 7-5 after extra time or whatever. They create these amazing moments. And unfortunately for us, we've actually been the part of a fair few of them. From a negative point of view, we've also had a positive. I mean, the day that we obviously we went to Old Trafford in January of the year as the song went, and we did what we did as the only time Alex Ferguson went out to an opposition in a division below him in a league structure. That was the only time that ever happened, and it was Leeds United going to Old Trafford in a 1-0 win. So, we've created our own sorts of FA Cup history as well. So yeah, I've always been fond of the FA Cup. I still get excited about it now, whether Leeds are in it or not. I would still always watch the FA Cup final. I think it's one of the most romantic, if you like, domestic trophies in the world. It is probably the only domestic trophy in the world that means as much around the whole globe as it does in its own country. Like nobody cares really about the Copa del Rey final or the Serie A. I don't even know what the Serie A Cup's called. Nobody cares really about the domestic cups. I saw a clip the other day of Barcelona conceding to a third division team out in Spain. I don't know if you saw that. They ended up winning the game 2-1, but that never happens out there. Whereas in the UK and England, it happens all the time. It happens every year, doesn't it? There's an upset every year, whereas in a broad country, it just doesn't happen because the gap in between a top tier team like Barcelona and a third division team in Spain is so big. Whereas in this country, even though it's massive, it's not as big. So it's a fantastic competition.
No, indeed. Lee, welcome along, mate. I remember that game, Betford scored. I mean, there was a kind of, I don't know, it seemed to kind of, that period is such a blur for me, but there seemed to be a run of maybe, I don't know, over a kind of 3-4 year period where we had a little go in the FA Cup. Obviously, we beat, I remember how I felt going, into that game against Man United. I remember me thinking, oh my God, what if we lose like 10-0? Or what if it's like a record-breaking defeat? Because we'd not been in the Premier League for so long at that point, and obviously we were 2 divisions below at that point, which is incredible to think. And it was just the stuff of absolute dreams. I mean, the elation from that victory, I mean, it was just such a high point in what was a difficult 16 years before we got back up. And, after that, then we had, obviously, we went to Arsenal. I remember Snodgrass scoring a penalty against Arsenal, and, we brought Spurs back. Beckford got a penalty against Spurs, and we brought them back. There was that kind of a little bit of thing where we were kind of having to go at Premier League teams for a couple of years, weren't there, Jason?
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny. I've got the fixtures to my right here, so I'm not just professing to remember all these back to back to back to back. And we'll probably dive into a few of these in more detail as we go along. But it's funny when it comes to the FA Cup, because I kind of always think of the start of the demise as the FA Cup loss to Cardiff. I always think about that as kind of like that was the point where we started, the trajectory was like that, and then we'd gone over that edge. And then the year after we lost to Sheffield United, which then compounded the misery even more. And then before the moments where you're talking about there of adulation as a League One team, we went out to Hereford and we went out to Histon the year before. And then, the year that we went to Old Trafford and did what we did, we followed that up with a 4th round fixture against Spurs and did the same again with Mr. Beckford doing the business down at their place right at the death. Brought them back to Ellen Road and lost at Ellen Road. But we did the same to Arsenal the year after as a Championship team, newly promoted Championship team at that point. And we had series of moments where we kind of just reminded the English football fan that we're a big club without being a big club at that time, if that makes sense, as a League One and a Championship team. So, we kind of flirted with being the fallen giant, if you like. And we had some good teams. We had some good teams. We had some heroes in that League One team. I think about the team that beat Manchester United, the likes of Jason Crowe and Ben Parker, Johnny Howson.
Norbo was good, great, wasn't he?
Norbo, Michael Doyle. Like the players that kind of go under the radar that'll be forgotten about for the casual Leeds fan or any Leeds fan that's popped up since getting back into the Championship. The League One days was full of a few unsung heroes. Mr. Andy Hughes, who I saw on the bench.
He's kicking off, wasn't he? Against,
but he's a bit of a Leeds legend, really, isn't he? Certainly as a League One day, was a player with limited ability, but everything that we wanted a Leeds player to be around at that time was shown by some of them boys. And Snoddy, as a couple of you mentioned in there, what a player. So great times, mate. In and amongst the league days, which were quite stressful at the time as well. Think about what we're going through similarly with now, and we went through with Bielsa in League One. It was just as stressful. It was just as, if anything, the pressure was even bigger because the cup finals that we were dealing with then were even bigger than we're dealing with now. Like every week we turned up, and fans, teams that had just take no travelling fans, all of a sudden had 2,000 away fans at Ellen Road, and the League One days were crackers, absolutely crackers.
Yeah, indeed, and we mentioned it on the flip side. Yeah, we had a few memorable moments, but like you say, Hereford, Histon. I mean, that Hereford, that was the first round as well. It was the first round exit against Hereford and Histon. I mean, you were there, weren't you, for the Histon game as well? I mean, have you just completely blocked that out from your memory, or what was it like kind of coming home from that game? It must have been just so dreadful.
So we got there that day, and I mean, as an adult, I've been to a number of different varying away grounds in non-league, and I've seen all sorts of different levels of football since. But as a teenager, I'd never seen football grounds like that. This is God's honest truth. I'd never seen football grounds like that. And when you got there, you didn't go in through a turnstile like you normally would do with an away day. And I'd been to tons and tons of away games with Leeds at this point. I was quite avid home and away at that point. And when we got there was no turnstile. You went through a tea room. So you literally went into a reception area, showed your ticket, no barriers, nothing. There was just a little lady serving tea while taking the little ticket stubs off you. It was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. And then you walked through. It was like you're going into a zoo. It was crazy. And then you went into the away end, and you can see me on TV where the goalie scored. I was right behind the netting. I'm literally right in front of where I think he was a postman who ended up scoring for Histon that day. He was a postman who scored the header. I mean, it absolutely tipped it down that day. It was throwing it down with rain. We were all soaking in behind that goal. The players, I mean, they were caked in mud, all of them. The ball were landing and sticking in the mud, no bounce to the ball. It was on ITV, if you remember. ITV camera was up in the gods on one of them scaffolding, getting blown all over the place. It was unbelievable. It was just one of them days. It was written in the stars for them, and they'll remember it forever. I mean, what do you even say about that game?
Did it become like a bit of a joke on the way home then? Was it like by that point you just had to have a sense of humour about it? You're like, we're just going to have a laugh about this? Because
a little bit, yeah. I mean, we went there with the full expectation that there was a giant killing potential, and we had a good team at the time, but we kind of expected that we'd be in a bit of trouble. And we didn't play a weak team that day either. We're a strong team, if I remember rightly. If I remember rightly, I think Snodgrass had a chance that got stuck in the goal mouth. It should have gone in, but the mud just stopped it. One of them. It was some day, mate. But it was an experience that I would never have taken away. It was amazing to go to a ground like that as a Leeds fan, if I'm honest. It wasn't so great going out of there.
You never want to go back.
Bragging rights. No, definitely not. Definitely not. But some experience.
Yeah, like Lee says in the comments here, Sutton United. I mean, the killer one for me was the Crawley Town one as well, where it was
3-0.
Buddy Mark Wright from whatever it is. A reality TV star coming on, and it was like he didn't play the game. He came on at the end of the summer. It was just like,
the most crazy thing, Browney, right? I'm just looking through them fixtures now, right? And after the year that we took Arsenal to a replay, I don't know if you're looking at them as well, but we've scored apart from the game against Peterborough, we've scored 2 goals in 12 years.
Oh my word, yeah.
And we've only scored in 2 of them. We've not scored in, I think I'm reading that as 11 of the games. We've not scored in them. It's unbelievable. The ones where we've been knocked out in, I'm talking. Like, it's barely even like we've turned up. We've lost to Rochdale in there, Sutton in there, Newport County in there. When Ben White played for them, by the way, that day. Crawley in there. The year that we, last year when we went down losing to Fulham in the 5th round, were a little bit of a sickener. I kind of felt like we could have done some of that last year. And we just turned up and had us belly sickled, really. Yeah,
we did. Yeah. Oh, I tell you, honestly, it's so frustrating looking at it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to share some of the results from Leeds United's history, because I think there's some really interesting talking points as you kind of go through it and try and get some insight as to why Leeds generally have kind of failed in the FA Cup. I mean, if you go right back to kind of when the club was formed and the FA Cup was up and running, I mean, if you start from kind of the 30s here, I mean, you can pretty much see we had no history in the FA Cup at all. We got a 6th round tie there against Arsenal in the 1949-50 season, but nothing really, And don't forget, this is a kind of time when you had a lot of, let's say clubs that are not doing anything spectacular now. We're clocking up 5 and 6, 7 FA Cup wins. I mean, it's wild. I mean, I think Blackburn have got a few FA Cup trophies under the belt, but Leeds never really got their act together until obviously Mr. Don Revie comes in 1962, and straight away, boom, 64-65 final against Liverpool. And on my little glory years videotape, I've seen the footage so many times, and Bremner scores an unbelievable equaliser in the second half, and then unfortunately we lose out. We finished second in the league that year as well. It is pretty brutal for Leeds after this. The Chelsea final, which is one of the most notorious finals in history. I think it's got an unbelievable record-breaking viewing figure from that time as well, and 2-2 at Wembley, and then losing 2-1 in the second round replay. I think a modern day referee reviewed it and said there'd have been about 9 sending off in the game equivalent to today. We beat Arsenal, obviously that's our high point, as the club in the FA Cup, and the famous commentary, Clark 1-0, it's burned into our memories as Leeds fans. But then, it's not, we don't get away with it, because straight after one of the biggest FA Cup shocks ever, we lost to Sunderland, and there's an absolute ridiculous save from their keeper, where it's he's palming it off the line, and Lorimer hits it rock hard from about 5 yards out, and somehow it doesn't go in. And then after that, it's pretty much nothing. It's really, really a barren run. We get a semi-final appearance against Coventry. We were also in the playoffs, I think, as well that year. And it, nearly got to the final as well, losing 3-2 after extra time. Again, after that, there's nothing much. Now, this is one that I have absolutely no memory of at all. And it's a quarter-final against Liverpool. We took them to a replay. Apparently, we lost 3-0 in that. I have absolutely no memory of that at all. It's wild. I honestly, I don't know why, because that's my kind of that's when I was first getting into it, and I'm obsessed. But I have absolutely no clue what that is. I'm we made a quarter-final in 94, 95. I don't remember that.
I was only 5, so I can't say that I would remember it, but I also don't know of it. So I know what you mean.
No.
It's never discussed or spoken about.
I don't know what happened.
Maybe they went on to lose in the next round. I don't know. But it's funny, because I consider, for me as a Leeds fan specifically, the cup competitions to be nothing but real misery. My first memory of football was the 95-96 League Cup final. I think it was the 95-96 when we lost 3-0 to Villa. And it's one of the first memories I have of football and Leeds United in general. But apart from that, if you actually have a look at our history in cup competition, we're serial failures, to be honest. And we really are. And not only, I'm not talking about going out in finals and semi-finals, especially over the more recent history, 3rd rounds, 1st round, 2nd rounds, is where it's been at.
Yeah. So, a particular brutal one that I do remember is a quarter-final against Wolves, and it was at Ellen Road, and it was a huge opportunity to get to a semi-final. I do remember that. I remember being absolutely gutted about that. And like you say, that one against Cardiff really was a marker of the downfall of what happened next. What I find strange as well is, because obviously the FA Cup nowadays, it's dominated. I mean, you've had Leicester, but generally speaking, it's dominated by Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool. I know we had Wigan a few years before that. We had Portsmouth as well a few years before that. Yeah. But generally speaking, it's those top teams getting in. But during the kind of, during the 90s and stuff, I would have expected the teams that we had with the quality under Howard Wilkinson and David O'Leary. I'm thinking, why didn't we make that a bigger focus? Why didn't we at least get to a semi-final with those teams? Why didn't we get to a final? I mean, it's kind of bizarre. I mean, if you look at kind of the O'Leary years, he comes in kind of 98, 99, and there's nothing much there, really. I mean, there's that quarterfinals. Well, I think he was gone, wasn't he, by that one, that Sheffield United one, but just nothing really. And for me, it's why didn't we focus on that a bit more? Why didn't we really just set a stall out to try and win a domestic trophy?
I mean, I certainly think under the O'Leary years, we certainly flattered to deceive when it came to a domestic trophy, even if it was just a League Cup. And because we had a team perfectly set up for cup competition, we saw that in the Champions League and the UEFA Cup runs. So yeah, I agree with you completely. Just before I forget to mention it, because I just think it's unbelievable. I didn't know this, but do you know who scored for Wolves in that game?
Oh,
The 1-0 win at Ellen Road.
I'm going to kick myself.
82nd minute. I had no idea about this.
Who was it?
Don Goodman.
Oh,
Don Goodman.
I
can't believe that.
That's about Mr. Penalty, didn't he? As well, I think.
I can't see
he missed a penalty in that game as well, which is pretty damn devastating.
Robbie Keane came on for Wolves that day for
oh my God,
Steve Bull for Wolves.
Steve Bull.
And
it's a mishmash, that.
Dougie Friedman played up front for Wolves that day as well. It's unbelievable. Wow. Just like looking back in history, Dean Richards played for Wolves that day. Keith Curle played for Wolves that day. But yeah, Don Goodman scored the winner.
I mean, can you just twist the knife any deeper
hilarious.
Than Don Goodman scoring the winner at Ellen Road to knock Leeds out? He's a Leeds fan as well, apparently, he says. Well, but there we go. So cheers, Don. Yeah. Cheers, Don. You could have scuffed that one wide or something. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, when you look through it, it's a pretty checkered past, to say the least. Not much success for Leeds going. What do you think? Is it just our DNA then, Jess? Is we just not? I mean, we definitely we do bottle the big games, don't we? Let's be honest. When it comes to like finals and playoff finals, I mean, look at our playoff record. Yeah. You know, I mean, we just, I don't know what it is. Is it just Leeds' DNA that we're not successful in cup? We are more of a league team, aren't we? Really? Yeah. When we get that together in the league, you know, I mean, I think we're still, you know, I think when they tally up who's ever, you know, acquired the most Premier League points, we're still in the top 10 or something. Yeah, we've been out of the league for years, you know.
I do think there's a certain element of it takes us to Leeds United. I've said this before. I hate backing up Karen Carney and what she said, and I'm not saying what she said was true. I think we would have gone on to win the league anyway, but I do believe there was a certain amount of success that we enjoyed because of COVID, or more importantly, because we had no fans. And Leeds fans are some of the best in the world. They are the best in the world. I think the away support is unreal. And Ellen Road can be an absolute fortress at times. But I do think they can also be a hindrance to certain players. Look at what we've seen with the likes of Patrick Bamford, with and without crowd. You know, and he's not on his own. He's definitely not on his own. I think of Jack Harrison when I say that as well. You know, these players that have clearly got technical ability, but they just can't deal with the expectation and the pressure of that fan base. And it's a curse and a luxury at the same time, innit? And I think that comes down to a lot of it. You know, like, why is that Leeds United team losing 1-0 at home to Wolves? Back then, you know, Wolves weren't even a Premier League side, I don't think, then. There'd have been a Championship side.
No, they would have been, they certainly weren't established.
They weren't what they are now, or even over the last few years. So, you know, it bears nothing other than mentality. And dealing with the expectations and the pressure. I think the playoffs have shown that over the years. You know, we're the only team in Championship history to win an away leg and then go and lose the tie at home. We're the only one in history. And not only did we manage to do that from being 1-0 up, we were 2-0 up on aggregate. And we still managed to find a way to throw it away. I don't know if you've seen it, but Frank Lampard was on the overlap.
I've seen clips. Does he talk about Leeds or that?
He mentions Leeds about 5 times in the first 10 minutes. Lovely. But he openly admits, you know, one of his highlights as a manager is beating Leeds in that playoffs and going to the final. And he openly says that they weren't as good as us. They didn't have a team that was as good as us, and they didn't. But yet they still managed to overcome us. And you'd have to believe if that game was played behind closed doors, would we have gone through that game? Would we? Exactly. Would we have been able to rebuild when Cooper and Casillas made that mistake without crowd there? You have to. Yeah. And I like I say, I'm a huge fan. I'm passionate about it, but
I agree. I agree. I think it's you know, Leeds is one of them fan bases as well where, you know, there's no areas of grey. We love our club. We're passionate about it. We want the best for it. We're fierce fan base. You know what I mean? That's why we get a lot of hate as well, because we are so kind of tribal.
Yeah.
But that's the magic of it as well, and we wouldn't want it any other way. And it takes huge characters to be able to handle that.
I agree completely. I think it brings the best and worst out of certain players. Again, that's why I think we can look over history and look at the likes of Andros Townsend, Jake Livermore, you know, who have come, Ross Barkley, who have come to Ellen Road with huge expectations, gone on to achieve amazing things as footballers, but completely bottled it under the lights at Ellen Road. I think of Andros Townsend the most when I think of that, because he's obviously gone on to have a good career, but he's had a lot of mental health issues. And he clearly just couldn't deal with it. He was a very talented footballer, but he just couldn't deal with Ellen Road.
No.
I think there's a lot in it. I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, as we've noted before, how the homegrown players, you know, the ones that make it really seem to make it, because they're kind of almost, it's inbred in them, isn't it? That that this is what it's going to be like playing in front of them. You look at Archie Gray now, and he's just handling it. So I've got a question for you. This season, Leeds are in the 4th round of the FA Cup. Red pill, you're FA Cup champions. Blue pill, you go up back to the Premier League. You can only have one or the other. Which are you taking?
Probably promotion.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, it's a boring answer. I know it's a boring answer, but it's just more important. It's more important for the future of the club. It'd give us the opportunity to win other FA Cups and League Cups and get back into Europe and play the elite and see the best players at Ellen Road. You know, without promotion to the Premier League under Bielsa, I'd never have got to see Rafinha, who is without a doubt the best player that we've seen in my lifetime. I think certainly since I've been of any age to kind of remember it. You know, we got to experience them things. I think that would just top it. You know, I know we've had this conversation before. Would Wigan fans or would Birmingham fans pass up them cups to still be in the Premier League? And I think it'd be copium to say that they would prefer to keep the cup rather than the status of being in the Premier League. I think they'd all really swap it. If they were actually offered that situation, I think they'd all swap it. And so I'd have to say that, but it's through gritty teeth, because I would love to see us win a cup competition. I know we won the league under Bielsa, and that was nice, but it's not the same as winning a Premier League or winning one of the domestic cups. So yeah, it's a tough one. What about you? Same question.
I've got to be honest. I'll probably take FA Cup glory. I really would. I think logic completely says promotion, because of all the reasons you've said. The fact that, you know, your future is going to be brighter if you're in the Premier League, just from the way you can invest in your team. Absolutely. But I just think the glory of an actual trophy win, I mean, I'm hoping I get to experience that in my life. I'm desperate for it. I'm so desperate to see us kind of do something like that. I mean, do you see it happening in your lifetime? I mean, it's just gets to a point where you just kind of, we've had nothing, have we? Like you say, we've had the Championship win, but it's not a Premier League. It's not an FA Cup, a League Cup. It's not a European trophy. You know, I really want, us to get something along those lines. I mean, surely we can do just one at least before.
I have to say, it'd be surreal as a Championship team to laugh at everybody while we win the FA Cup. I think that'd be hilarious. And
it'd be incredible.
What a moment to be able to enjoy that as a Leeds fan, especially. Will we ever win one in our lifetime? I mean, it's been 50 years since we've won a cup, and it's been 30 years or just over 30 years since we've won a top league. Odds would suggest that it's unlikely.
Scary, isn't it? It's scary, because it makes you think, what is it all about at the end of the day? And it's this kind of, perennial search for that kind of treasure at the end of the rainbow, isn't it? You keep going, and this is going to be our year. Something could happen, and this is the magic of the FA Cup for me. When you get through those rounds, it starts to just that little voice in your head, like, could it? Is it?
Could it happen? Yeah.
And it's not a 46 league campaign. It's just a few games.
I think, Brown, it's got a lot to do with where we see ourselves as Leeds fans and where we see the club. Because let's, cut it straight. There's way more clubs thinking that they'll never see their team win a trophy than there is clubs that think they will see their team win a trophy. Anybody from, I would say, probably 10th in the Championship down will never see their team win an FA Cup or a League Cup. Because it's just so unlikely to happen. The competitions are dominated by the very, very top. The fact that we're even in a conversation where we're saying we hope we could see it says where our club actually falls in the pecking order of football in this country. What does a Swindon fan want to see? Do they want to see themselves win JPT Trophy or get promoted to the Championship? Is that their ceiling? Do you know what I mean? So it's a funny kind of landscape when it comes to football, isn't it? So the fact that we're even in a position to say, we might be able to see our team win a domestic cup or qualify for Europe again, probably we're probably a little bit blessed. In that sense, really.
It definitely feels like we're in that next bracket of clubs, doesn't it? We're not the winners. We're not the serial winners by any stretch of the imagination, but we're in that kind of maybe group. You look at what Leicester did, winning a league and winning an FA Cup. I mean, if I'm a Leicester fan, even though we got relegated, I'm living off those memories. I'm living off the success. It's a different feeling. It's not what we did where we went up, we got 9th, and then, a crap season followed by relegation. They had proper bona fide success.
Leicester, for me, the standout in world football because they got to experience something that they just had no real right to. And, they'll live off that forever. They've got a generation of fans that will forever be able to dine out on that. And rightly so as well. I mean, that's what sport's about. 100%. I would have swapped relegation for that. I can tell you that now. Like, if you told me that we'd have gone up in the season that we'd finished 9th, we'd have won the league, let's say, and then 2 years later we'd have got relegated, I'd have taken that. I'd have absolutely taken that all day, snap your hands up. So Leicester ended up getting relegated in 10 years. They won't even care. They're enjoying themselves this season. They'll be back up next year. So, 100%. 100%. Right.
Absolutely. Well, it's a couple of days now until the game against Plymouth at home. I think, we mentioned, on our match review for the Norwich game that we think players will be rested and everything like that. Are you expecting a victory, AJ?
I think so. Plymouth have got their own battles on as well. And while we're resting players and whatnot for promotion battle, they'll be resting players for a Championship relegation battle. They're terrible away from home. I don't think there's much to garner for them in terms of, maybe to break this away hoodoo that they've got. It could be important for them to go and win the game, but I think they'll still be having one eye on the league as well. I would expect that even with a few changes, we can come out of that game with a 1 or 2-0 win. As long as the team is picked correctly and we're not risking players, even if we do go out, which I don't expect that we will, but even if we do, it won't be the end of the world. But I do expect us to win the game. 2-0. 2-0, I think.
Yeah, and then it's 5th round and it gets even more exciting, doesn't it, then when that draw gets done.
Keep giving me the home ties and give me the lowest team going. Just give me the worst team going and just allow our boys to just breeze past them as long as... I don't want no tie. I don't want this Manchester United away. No. Manchester United at home I would probably take because I think we can actually beat them. And I think it'd be quite fun. In the 5th round, that would be quite nice. But for me, the longer we can go against weaker opposition, especially at home, I just expect us to win. So, why not? Quarterfinal. Quarterfinal would be a huge win for us. If we could get to a quarterfinal FA Cup, I'd take it.
It'd be magic, wouldn't it? Come on.
You'd be dreaming then, wouldn't you, Browney?
I know, yeah.
2 games away.
Oh, my word. I'm gonna be loving it, I tell you, if we get that far. Okay, we're going to wrap things up there. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you're watching again later, please do get your comments in. And if you're listening on Spotify, please do also like and review the podcast as well. I've been Stephen Brown. With me has been Jason Bucket. Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.
And we'll be back next week for another Leeds debate. We'll see you then.